Hello and welcome. Thanks for taking the time to join us on today's webinar, 5 Account-Based Marketing Mistakes Most Marketers Make and What Dynamic Signal Did About It. We're going to get started here in approximately a minute and a half, 2 minutes. We have a number of people who are in the process of joining. We just want to make sure everybody is on board for the entirety of the program. So we appreciate your patience, and you will be in silence until we get the program started. So thanks again for joining, and we'll get started soon. Hello and welcome once again. Thanks for taking the time to join us on today's session, 5 Account-Based Marketing Mistakes Most Marketers Make and What Dynamic Signal Did About It, presented by PFL and Dynamic Signal. My name is Phil Smith, and I'll be your producer for today's session. And before we get started, I want to cover a few housekeeping items and let you know that today's session is being recorded. You'll receive a link to that recording in a follow-up email in the next couple of days. We have also allocated time at the end of today's program for Q&A, and we'd like you to submit questions throughout today's session. And to do that, you can use the Q&A pod found over on the left-hand side of your console. Just type your question into the lower field and be sure to click the Submit button to have that question placed in the queue. We will try to answer as many questions as time allows. And for best viewing experience, we recommend that you expand your slide viewing area by clicking on the Maximize icon in the upper right corner of that live view window, or you can click and drag in the lower right-hand corner to resize it to a custom size. The audio for today's presentation is streaming only, so there's no dial-in option available. To ensure the highest quality audio, please go ahead and close out of any other applications you may have open. These do use bandwidth and can cause latency or disconnect issues. Also, please make sure that your audio is set to an adequate volume so you can hear us clearly. And with that, thank you again for joining us on today's presentation, 5 Account-Based Marketing Mistakes Most Marketers Make and What Dynamic Signal Did About It. It is now my pleasure to turn today's presentation over to your first presenter, that is Marnie Reed, Chief Evangelist with PFL. Marnie, you have the floor.
Thank you, Phil. I definitely appreciate the introduction, and I'm very excited to have you guys here today. Thank you for joining our webinar. We are sharing an awesome story about a high-performing marketer that I had the opportunity to meet a couple months ago and do some work with. She is really going through an ABM transformation and seeing some great results. So as Phil mentioned, I am Marnie Reed, our Chief Evangelist here at PFL. I'm a 17-year veteran here, so very long time. I'm excited to be joined by our customer, Katie Kelley. She is the Senior Associate in Customer Marketing at Dynamic Signal. So welcome, Katie.
Hi, Marnie. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited for this.
Awesome. So I'd like to start today just giving you a little background on who PFL is. So we are a marketing technology company that helps marketers really cut through that digital clutter by delivering impactful and meaningful messages with our solution called Tactile Marketing Automation. We do this by integrating with the Marketo Engage platform. These are tools that you're already using today, and what it does is it allows us to help sending a personalized, very personalized postcard or multi-dimensional mailer as personalized and timely as your digital marketing. So starting off with why ABM. So you have to start with really who is your ideal customer profile, and I think the key piece is ideal. So we have customers that come inbound that are really great customers for us, but when you look at your ABM strategy, you need to be crystal clear on who are you going to align your entire organization to go after. But the second piece of success with ABM is really about the personalization. So our prospects and our customers have a very heightened expectation of having very highly personalized communications to them in the method that they are choosing. So that personalization is really key to the success of your ABM programs. It really allows marketers to target the accounts that are highest priority and tailor the messaging that helps them stand out amongst the other clutter. The other piece is really about the results. So like any marketing strategy, ABM must be trackable. It's a pretty heavy lift to implement ABM, as Katie will share with us. And according to the Information Technology Services Marketing Association, which, yes, that is a mouthful, 84% of businesses surveyed said that account-based marketing delivers a higher ROI than their other types of marketing. And that increase in ROI really comes from understanding those accounts that you're targeting and the marketing channels that they best react to, and then obviously scaling those channels. The third piece that I think really helps with the success of ABM is aligning your entire organization around these efforts. And no area of the business should be operating in a silo, but I think when you implement ABM, it really helps the sales and marketing team align on the strategy and the tactics. And when targeting a higher value account, it's also important to develop a thoughtful approach from a marketing and sales to boost that engagement. But for the audience who is here today, if you've actually tried to implement ABM, there's some challenges associated with that. I think the first challenge that we hear from our customers and we've experienced with ourselves is really around the data. You'll hear people talk about data, and where we are collecting a lot of rich behavioral data from our audience, how do you really combine that data, all of the sources, and make sure that it's accurate and it tells a story for you to understand who you're going after and what is the communication that you should have with them. And the other piece to look at is how do you actually enrich that data in real time. So we might have a lot of information that we're collecting, but you need to append that with other sources of data to help get a very clear view of who you're going after. The third challenge that I think we've experienced and our customers have experienced is really that multi-channel campaign consistency. So ABM is really most successful when multiple marketing channels are utilized. But the key is not only utilizing those channels, but how do you actually orchestrate these? And it can be difficult. And then third and final is how do you really scale the successful campaigns, looking at the data and understanding what's working and what's not working. And for those things that are not working, how do you actually shut those down? So one of my objectives here today is I want to make sure that we're engaging with you guys who are on the phone with us and understanding some of the challenges that you're going through. So when we do have an opportunity to open up to Q&A, that Katie and I are able to hopefully answer any questions that you might have that will really help you be more successful in your ABM campaigns and your strategy. So I'd like to hear from you guys on what are your ABM challenges. Is it understanding your metrics? Is it really the multi-channel orchestration? Or is it aligning within your organization on your target accounts that you're going after? So I'm going to give it just a minute here. Hopefully you guys will take an opportunity to simply click one of those buttons. All right, let's see what we've got. That is remarkable. That is such an even blend between all three of those things. That's amazing. I did not pre-bake this, I promise. Very interesting, and hopefully if there are specific questions that you have, we can dive into those at the end of our session today. So at this point, I'm very excited to turn it over to Katie and really hear some of the things that she has done to transform her marketing there. Like I said, she's just an absolutely brilliant marketer, and I'm excited to turn it over to you, Katie.
Great. Thank you so much for the introduction, Marnie. Hi, everyone. My name is Katie Kelley. I am the Senior Associate of Customer Marketing and ABM here at Dynamic Signal. I wanted to give you a quick background about Dynamic Signal so you have a better understanding of the target market we're going after and how we really approach our campaigns. So Dynamic Signal is an employee communication and engagement platform. We're working with some of the leading enterprise companies around the world to really connect and empower their workforce. So making sure that employees have the right content that they need and want to do their job successfully delivered to them on the device and channel that they most prefer. So that could be mobile, web, or desktop. So we have a very communication and engagement focused marketing strategy, and that kind of brings us into our campaign strategy and how we actually started to look at ABM. So I actually joined the team about 2 years ago, and I thought the best place for us to start was to take a snapshot of how we were approaching ABM a little over a year ago at this point. As you can see from this graphic, it was an extremely linear process. So it started out with our campaign development. That included strategic planning. We got a brainstorm together, what we were going to be doing for messaging and themes around direct mail. And then it kind of came over to the execution. So getting our SDR team involved, getting the actual stand-up of the campaign together, which, as Marnie said, it can be a huge lift. And then really going after this targeted go-live date. And then very confidently throwing this over to the SDRs and having them do follow-up. We rounded out our campaign execution by doing an impact analysis at the end of the quarter, and then the next quarter we would do this all over again. So it was a pretty cookie-cutter process that we did over and over again, and there were a lot of check boxes that we needed to go through. So we actually didn't necessarily know, jumped ahead of myself. We didn't actually know what we were doing wrong at the beginning because all we had an understanding of was what we are currently doing every single quarter. It wasn't until we actually partnered with PFL and they started to educate us on the ways we could be running campaigns differently that we kind of took a step back and realized there were 5 key mistakes that we were making. So I broke them down, and it kind of covers the challenges that Marnie was talking about previously. And those are campaign development, our SDR alignment, the partnership we were building with our sales team, how we were actually measuring these results, and then how we were looking at direct mail beyond just the 1 or 2 campaigns that we were running every quarter, really going beyond marketing. So if I jump over to the next one, I wanted to dive into each of these separately. So first, we're going to do campaign development. This is really all across the board from campaign development. It's how we worked with the sales organization, measure results, and more. We started off with building our campaign. And if I think back to some of the things we did a year ago, I realized, I had this insane realization that 100% of it was marketing focused. We ran direct mail campaigns all based on a cornerstone ebook that we were going to be putting out that quarter, a blog post, some theme that our CMO was really excited about that was really resonating with our target communications persona. We started to build a direct mail campaign completely around this. So it really excluded the sales organization and what they were working on that corner, and we kind of had a very siloed focus for our team. The second part of this was really our campaign execution. As I am sure many of you guys know, getting direct mail stood up can be a long and strenuous process. So we did everything in-house. So we worked with several vendors to get the actual swag put together. We worked on all the messaging, putting that collateral together and boxing everything and shipping it out. This timeline varied between 4 and 6 weeks. It was a huge lift and a lot of moving parts and just a lot of manual labor for us. And because of that, we could not scale any of our campaigns. We had a lack of resources throughout our team, and we were really only running about 1 campaign per quarter and 2 if we were extremely lucky and efficient. And a lot of that actually came down to our ability to kind of repurpose some campaigns that we did last quarter. If they were really helpful, we'd tweak it to a new persona. So we already had the foundation there, so it was a lot easier for us to stand it up so we actually could get more done. The second part of this is our SDR alignment. So our SDR organization, to kind of give you a background, is a 50-person global team located in San Francisco, Chicago, and London. So extremely dispersed throughout different locations. And we had a history of being a very outbound-focused team. So when I actually joined Dynamic Signal, I was on the sales development team, so I have a good background of this and being on the receiving end of these marketing campaigns. and our marketing team looked a lot different at the time, and leads that were coming in, they weren't necessarily disregarded, but there was a level of pessimism that a lot of SDRs had when following up on leads. So there was a huge chasm between our marketing organization, our sales organization, because they had the mentality that sales was working on one set of accounts, one set of target personas, and marketing was working on the other. So there was really a lack of alignment right there. This also had a huge effect in how we were working with the SDRs on follow-up. So in the part of the execution we were working on, was we needed the SDRs to actually help us choose the target prospects and accounts that were going to be receiving direct mail. So in the 4 to 6 weeks that we were actually standing this campaign up, we would get our SDRs together, go through this very manual process of adding people to a Salesforce campaign, giving them background of what the messaging was going to be, and then giving them a week or so to actually add people to a campaign. And that involved me chasing down a lot of people. I'm sure you guys have been there where you're trying to see how many people have been added to the campaign, you're ready to run it, and maybe only a handful of people have actually taken the time out of their workday, which is very busy with calls and emails and follow-up, to add people to this campaign. So I was chasing down a lot of SDRs at the moment, and I sympathized with them. There had been a huge time lapse between when we introduced this campaign to when they were actually going to be executing on it. And as they're going through their prospects, they got super excited about people. All of a sudden, you find this chief communications officer at a company that you hadn't really been focusing on, and you want to follow up with them immediately. You didn't want to wait those 3 to 4 weeks for the marketing team to kind of get everything together and push this campaign out the door. You wanted to follow up with them immediately and get that meeting and push something into pipeline. So a lot of misalignment there, and we were also just interrupting their workflow. They wanted to get things done quickly, and we were doing a lot of stuff in-house, which didn't allow for the SDRs to have timely follow-up. They had that huge time lapse there. And despite all of this, our campaigns very much lived and died with the SDR team. So we would do all the stand-up, have a go-live target date, and once we did that, we kind of toss it into their hands, provide them with messaging for follow-up, and kind of cross our fingers and check back in a week and see how things were going. So it was a very bottleneck of a process, and we didn't have a lot of understanding of what the SDRs wanted. It was just kind of, this was the status quo, and we were going to keep going forward with it. And beyond that, we had a very small partnership, is probably a generous word at this point, but a partnership with our account executive team. So I mentioned that our SDR team is about 50 people. Our AE team is just as big. It's about 25 to 30 people. 80% of them are working remote, so I know a handful of them, but I haven't met all of them in person before. So orchestrating that kind of relationship via emails and Skype meetings and things like that is a totally different challenge. So we didn't actually put a lot of emphasis onto partnering with our account executives. As I said, the campaigns very much lived and breathed and died with our SDR team, and we were satisfied with that. We knew that our team was so large and they were generating so much pipeline, doing a ton of their own prospecting, that we had a lot of trust and confidence in our SDR team to be that bridge between us and the account executive team and kind of keep them in the know. And a lot of this comes down to the fact that there was not a lot of transparency around what we were doing. There was that huge step of the SDRs being in the middle, and there was not a lot of metrics or kind of a mixed understanding of how inbounds had come in previously, so there wasn't a lot of trust there with our AE team. So for a long time, we very much disregarded and did not put a lot of focus on how we could improve that partnership. And so after all of this, we've gotten the entire campaign stood up and ready to go. We had a lot of issues with measuring success. So this really came down to the fact that we had no proper way to put ROI behind a lot of our campaigns. And because of that, we were left with only the ability to kind of repeat these campaigns quarter after quarter. We didn't have the time necessarily, because these were very time-consuming, to look back and see what we were doing wrong, how we could improve, and what we could do better going forward. So with metrics, as I said, the SDR team was vital for our success. We put all of the credit behind opportunity creation based on direct mail that had been delivered to very high targeted prospects. And that was basically all we were looking at. We didn't have any tools in place to look beyond that. Just to give an understanding of the results, this is probably early of 2018, only 13% of our opportunities created had a direct mail campaign touch in Q2 of 2018. And 95% of those actually were closed losses in the quarter. So understanding that now, I am shocked almost that it took us so long to kind of get our act together and realize that we could be doing so much better and kind of turn around these issues and create a more cohesive ABM strategy. But we were kind of going off of precedent, and we didn't know exactly what we needed to change at that time. As I mentioned, we had no ongoing tools to impact our strategy. So we kind of kept going, and it wasn't until PFL came around that we were able to have changed this idea. And the last thing here was going beyond marketing for us. We use direct mail for one instance, one game plan, and that was to create new business opportunities. So we only focused on top of funnel campaigns. We focused on mostly enterprise accounts, and this is mostly because we were consumed by the setup of a campaign. We had no wiggle room to see where else we could be helping out, and it was more of the idea is if we stopped doing a top of funnel campaign one quarter and focus somewhere else, what would we be losing by shifting our focus? I'm going to toss it back to Marnie.
Yeah, thanks, Katie. Definitely.
Yeah.
So I'm going to have you guys wait with bated breath on what are some of the things that Katie did to actually fix some of those challenges that she just spoke about. And we are getting some really good questions from the audience. I appreciate you guys engaging with us, and I'll make sure to answer those questions towards the end of our webinar. So I want to poll the group here. And I know Tom from Census Xylem, hopefully I said your company name right, talked about direct mail has a lot of challenges. So I'm curious to know from the audience, what type of direct mail do you use in ABM, or do you not have that as a channel in your ABM strategy? So if you could take just a minute and give us that information, I'm very curious about that. All right, so here's what we've got from the audience. We've got 15.4% on postcards, 15.4% again on letters, and we have 46% on dimensional packages, interesting, and then 23% of the audience has no direct mail as a piece of their ABM strategy. So one of the things that we did here at PFL, partnering with a company called Demand Metric, is we actually surveyed 575 marketers. And the information that we got back is a stunning 89% found that dimensional mail does the best job of representing a company's brand. So pretty interesting statistics there. For those of you who might want to read our full report, at the end of our session, I have a link that you can click on to, and we will be happy to provide that information to you. It's a very robust report. So now what you've all been waiting for, I'll kick it back to Katie, and she can talk through some of the things that she did to improve her ABM.
Yeah, thanks, Marnie. I'm excited about those results from that poll we just took, because I can speak to it pretty well in these upcoming slides. This is obviously the much more exciting part of kind of PFL comes along. We also had a phenomenal integration with Visible, which is owned by Marketo, and we were able to completely transform our ABM strategy. And I think it's maybe not people are in disbelief, but if I look at what happened a year ago and then where we are today and these successes I'm about to go over, it is jaw-dropping for our team when we think back about what we used to be doing. So in a similar fashion, I wanted to break down kind of these 5 mistakes and how we individually turned each of these around. So my manager actually brought in PFL. The company was near and dear to her heart. At her previous company, she had tried to buy it and kind of got right there to the end, and it didn't work out. So the first thing she did when she joined Dynamic Signal was stand her ground and claim that this is exactly what we needed to do. So in comes PFL, and this changed our strategy from the very beginning. So starting with campaign development, the customer success team and the Grizzly team, which is like the implementation professional services side of the organization, is a true partner for us. When we think about working on a campaign and where we want to start, we have a half-hour brainstorm session. I come to them with maybe sometimes a absurd idea, and we talk through the logistics, if it's actually plausible of standing this up. We talk about what we actually want to get out of it, the success metrics we're going to measure, what our desired timeline is, and they are phenomenal at working with us to show us examples of what other customers have done, what they have done, and I will be very honest, and we have stolen a lot of ideas from what PFL has done within their own strategy because they clearly are the leader in this space, so it's easy to take what they've done and kind of reimagine it for Dynamic Signal. And we were able, and with their whole process of tactile marketing automation, we were able to understand the gaps in our strategy. So we started standing up campaigns one after the other, and with that, we kept going back and having these aha moments of, oh my gosh, we've just been doing it this way. Like, there is a completely other area of in-funnel marketing that we could be doing and using direct mail to support that campaign strategy, and we haven't even had the time or thought process to do that. So they help us to look at our strategy in a much more holistic way, and we can kind of slot campaigns in now in spaces that we didn't even know we had gaps in before, and we can kind of keep building upon those. With the automation that's set up in Marketo, we're also able to trigger this direct mail based on activities our SDRs are taking. So this is the first time ever that we are supporting our sales team in real time. We have completely eliminated the gap in that was happening, the kind of time lapse that took for us to the campaign's inception to the execution. That is completely gone. We don't bring our sales team on until we are 100% ready to go, and they are in the know of the messaging, they're ready to do follow-up, and a lot of this is happening in the background, so they're getting real-time marketing support from us for the first time ever. And with all of this, we can finally scale out these direct mail programs. So we were running about 1, 2 if we were lucky every quarter. We now are running 5, soon to be 7 at this end of the quarter, which are continuous campaigns that are going on every single quarter and kind of running in conjunction with each other. And we plan to add 1 to 2 every quarter. So working with PFL, we kind of look at our strategy as a whole and see where we can slot new campaigns in. So we're constantly adding more campaigns, and we take a time to look back at the end of the quarter and see which ones are working and where we can improve, which is time, like the luxury of time that we did not have before. In all honesty, it did take us about, I'd say 6 to 8 months to get to this point. We had to first realize what we were doing wrong with our ABM strategy and how we were using direct mail, and a lot of that was just following PFL's leadership. And the more we worked with them, the more comfortable we got with kind of being experimental and throwing new campaigns into gaps that we hadn't really tested that water before, and we've gotten to a point where we can throw stuff in, be confident about it, and let it run for a while we can keep coming up with new ideas. And then it comes down to our SDR alignment. So I mentioned that this is the first time we're supporting our SDRs in real time with marketing efforts. And a lot of this is happening in the background. So we have several brochures that go out when SDRs are reaching out to prospects. We have an ability to support other marketing channels for the first time. So as I mentioned before, direct mail was operating very much in a silo. We were using it to support some of our content creation, like blog posts and ebook, but we were not supporting webinars or events. Now we have mailers that go out after webinars, which is an idea we also stole from PFL. We have pre-event mailers, so driving people towards our booth and to come visit us on site. We have really high-touch kind of dimensional boxes, like our barbecue kits and our tin can mailers, which I'll go into in a second. But this is the first time we are using direct mail to not just exist in and of itself. It is supporting other campaigns that are doing exceptionally well, and it's just a nice light touch to the SDRs, to our webinar team, to our events team. When they're working so hard, we just want to give them that extra effort. And with a lot of this, with our SDR team, we want to keep them in the know. The mailers that go out are happening a little bit behind the scenes. So we decided that we would have a monthly team meeting where we go in and refresh them on all these campaigns that are working in conjunction with their efforts and their outbound marketing efforts. And they want to be aware of this because they're working so hard to contact these prospects. but we refresh them on ideas, talk about all the successes that have happened thus far. That's a really great way how we build trust with them. And then we also have brought this into our SDR onboarding process. So I work with our sales enablement team, and we do a whole presentation on PFL, the wonders of it, and we break down every single campaign that's going on. We show them the physical mailers that are going out so they can get an idea and visualize what's going to be sent to their prospects, and so they're not unaware when all of a sudden they're reaching out to someone and maybe they got a direct mail from us, and they're able to talk to that really efficiently. Some really great wins that I wanted to cover from our SDR team is some of these campaigns that we're doing to support other marketing channels. One of these was our pre-event postcard. This was sent to a handful of people that we had an idea were going to be attending this event that we were sponsoring. We sent a postcard out to them. The recipient actually did not have the time to come visit us at our booth, but she contacted us immediately afterwards saying she had gotten the postcard, had been super swamped with the event, which is natural, but she wanted to set up a meeting. And that actually ended up being our fastest closing corporate deal in history. It closed at an exceptional rate. We were all stunned, and it all came from this one postcard that had just really fun messaging about dynamic signal, about the event theme, and we were able to go from there. So it's those little wins that we didn't even realize were possible before because we were doing such high-touch direct mail at a exceptionally slower pace that we were able to touch way more people when working with PFL, and our SDR team is always aligned with what these direct mail pieces are and when they're going out. So as a whole, we've actually influenced $1.2 million in ARR with all the new campaigns that we have that are coming out to support our SDR team. And it goes on to our AE partnership. So I mentioned before, we actually kind of ignored the AE partnership because there wasn't a lot of trust there. But the more we were able to stand up campaigns and have them run consistently without having to kind of go back to the drawing board every single quarter, we actually took a chunk of time and decided to invest in our AE partnership and really get that buy-in from the sales team that we didn't have before. So one of the most phenomenal parts for me was we actually started educating our AEs on PFL, kind of the direct mails that we were doing, some of the wins to build that trust. We had an account executive who was a bit newer to Dynamic Signal, set up some time with us, and come to us with this barbecue campaign idea. So you can see the picture here that PFL has put together for us. He had the Texas territory, and he had run something similar at his previous company and was raving about it. And I was definitely not going to say no to an AE coming to me with a direct mail campaign idea. So we worked together to stand up a barbecue meeting maker kit and had a really fun theme of let's meet, we'll bring the barbecue. And we started just with him. He picked about 20 accounts, and we ran this campaign and kind of just waited. He was super bought in to the whole process and was really excited about follow-up, and he had insane success. He was really great about keeping on theme. He used fun messaging in all of his follow-up, and he actually had a go-wide meeting that our VP of sales claimed to be the best on-site he'd ever had in his sales career, and I believe he's been in sales for about 15 years now. So that was a huge win for us, and that's really all it took for our AEs to come kind of knocking at my desk that they also wanted to run these campaigns. They had seen the success that their colleague had had, and they were super gung-ho about being a part of this as well. So we've actually been able to stand up 3 other campaigns that are specifically targeted for high-touch direct mail, solely in partnership with the AE team, and we're running those constantly now. We actually just ran out of all of our meeting kits because they are extremely popular. And the amazing thing now is that we have buy-in from our sales leadership, so they're really encouraging them to participate in these campaigns, and I also meet with them on a monthly call to talk about the successes of it. It's all about, for us, building trust with this organization, and that really comes from the number and kind of dollar aspect of it to see deals that have closed. We had our first deal closed from the barbecue campaign in Q3 of this year, and that in and of itself is enough to convince the entire sales team to kind of get on board and be a participant in these campaigns. And kind of going on to measuring the results and showing that ROI to our sales organization, we, in conjunction with working with PFL, we also partnered with Visible, and we were able to look at the different marketing touches we had and figure out how we're going to give and distribute credit across these different channels. So before, I said we were only giving credit to opportunity creation because we didn't have any other way to look at it. With Visible, we were actually able to set out an attribution model where we put weight behind different campaigns, and we're able to see kind of the full life cycle of our ABM campaigns and where they were having the most influence. So that helps a lot in us being able to actually measure the success of our campaigns. But if we look at this chart I pulled, this is the number of touches we've had for opportunity creation since kind of Q2 of 2018, which I mentioned before was only 13%. We've increased that by 52% today, and we have 65% of our opportunities that are created that have a direct mail touch. So this is an exceptional accelerator for our deals and our pipeline, and it's been phenomenal to be able to actually look at these numbers, and that's in partnership with Visible and being able to see when the touches are happening and how they are affecting our pipeline generation. So far, we've influenced 2.12 million in revenue. So we have a huge number for pipeline generation as well, but this is a really powerful number to bring to our sales organization, to bring back to our marketing leadership, to see that these direct mail campaigns are, while they can be a little bit lighter of a touch with the postcards, those larger dimensional pieces have a huge impact on our campaign cycle. And the kind of final one of this is going beyond marketing. So I mentioned before, in kind of this culmination of this whole thing, we didn't have an opportunity to look outside of the 1 or 2 campaigns we were running every quarter because we truly just didn't have the time for it. Now that we're able to stand up a campaign, let it run for a few months, go back and analyze the results and see how we can improve, what we should be tweaking, things like that, we actually have the time and the partnership with PFL to look beyond just those simple marketing strategies. As I mentioned, we're now supporting other marketing channels for the first time, like webinars and events, something we had never done before, and it really just elevates their success. And we also are using PFL and direct mail across 3 different organizations. So partnering very closely with the sales team, helping our marketing channels, and the final one is working with our customer success team. This is something we never could have imagined a year ago, or even thought that direct mail would have be a player in the customer success organization and kind of their game plan, but we're using it to send gifts to our customers. I recently took over our customer marketing team, so I now have the ability to kind of rethink direct mail and how we can be using it to support our customers. So congratulating them on small wins when they join Dynamic Signal, when they have an anniversary. We're all standing up these campaigns using PFL, and that would be absolutely impossible if we were still running this cookie cutter campaign strategy with doing the same things over and over again. And then kind of to wrap things up, I wanted to take a look at our ABM strategy as a whole. So in the very beginning, the graphic I showed was very linear. It took a long time from the start to finish to get things working. And the way we look at ABM today is much more holistic. So we separate it out into different parts of the life cycle. So top of funnel, we still run so many campaigns there to support SDR workflow, partnering with the AE team to target their top tier accounts with very high touch direct mail, working on webinar and event support. The lighter blue is things that we're working on right now to stand up with PFL because we have the time and the resources to do so. But we're working on persona targeting. For in-funnel, that's something we had never touched before, but the fact that we got buy-in and excitement from the AE team around the barbecue campaign and the tin can campaign we were running, we're able to now kind of go in-funnel and support their sales efforts that way. So we have, for stage 1 and 2, we're working on some supporting collateral there. We're working on what that messaging would look like for stage 3 in partnership with our sales executives. And then coming even to the customer lifecycle I mentioned. So we do our customer launch gifts, upsell campaigns. We're in the process of standing up customer triumphs. We are at a point where we feel very unlimited in what we can do. Obviously, there's resources and budget that will come into play, but these are, looking at this campaign strategy, we've never done this before, and the things we've accomplished with PFL and partnership with Marketo today are things we thought were unimaginable, like this time 2 years ago. So it's been a whirlwind to get all this together, but our whole team is at such a high functioning point now. We have support for advertising, and we use supportive collateral for all of these campaigns that we can truly innovate, and we're much more successful than we ever thought we would be about a year ago. And that is kind of the wrap-up I have here. I know Marnie has some really amazing collateral for you guys to check out, so I will toss it back to her before we go to Q&A.
Perfect, Katie. Thank you so much. That's amazing work that you guys have done, and it's exciting to hear all of the success that you guys are having. And obviously, we love working with you. So I mentioned earlier we did publish a multi-channel marketing report just a couple months ago. So if anyone is interested in receiving that report, you do have a link at the bottom of your screen. You can simply click on that, and then we will get that your way. We have some amazing questions, actually, from the audience, so I'm very excited that we're getting this much engagement from everybody. So, Katie, a couple questions. We've got Tom Curlin from Census Xylem. One of the questions that he had, and you touched on at the very end, but maybe you can dive a little deeper on it, is he asked, does it make sense to create buyer personas specific to each account and then market to them based off of that? He says, I realize there are likely different buyer personas within one account. Can you touch a little bit on that for us?
Yeah, so let me see, I'm reading this question back real quick. Yeah, so we don't necessarily do it by account. We do have 3 different buyer personas that we target, and we're in the process of spinning up a few campaigns that are specifically targeted to them. So a lot of the higher touch direct mail we do in partnership with our account executive team is very much based off persona. It is definitely a little bit more of a lift and more niche, but we see a lot more success when the messaging is targeted to a specific persona. It's a lot more relatable, and we work really closely with our sales team to choose the personas that they want to focus on most, where they're seeing the most success in their pipeline, what deals are moving forward. That's where we focus a majority of our efforts. So we don't do it for each account, but we definitely partner with our AEs to pick the top tier accounts and then double down on what persona we're going to be going after with certain campaigns.
Awesome. And we've got another question from Christine Pohl from OutSystems. She asked, when you talk about campaign development and running up to 7 campaigns at a time, she's asking, what types of campaigns are these? What tactics are you using outside of direct mail?
Yeah, so we have campaigns right now that touch every part of our life cycle. A majority of these are still top-of-funnel campaigns. This includes after webinars, we send a thank you and a coffee to people. It has a message that comes personally from the SDR that owns that account. So when they're doing their follow-up post-webinar, they're able to have that personalized touch to it. We also do our pre-mailers before events. These are smaller postcards, so not as expensive to send these out to a larger group of people, but still really do an amazing job supporting the existing marketing channels that are operating so successfully for us. We also do a lot of general awareness campaigns. So when our SDRs are reaching out, we have a really fun, dimensional brochure that's all about dynamic signal that gets sent out whenever an SDR changes a contact status in Salesforce. That indicates that they're going to start kind of sprinting on them and continuing their outreach. We immediately send them a direct mail. We also have our high-touch campaigns. So these are going out to AEs or in partnership with AEs, their top accounts. And then we also have our CSMs working on customer launch gifts, customer triumph gifts, things like that. So we set up all of these campaigns from the get-go, and we work with our AEs our AEs, CSMs, and SDRs to keep them very knowledgeable what the messaging is. We have guides online that anyone can access through a tool we use called HighSpot, but it kind of breaks down every single campaign, so they are constantly in the know of what's going on. But most of these are all direct mail. And I see the second part of your question is what other tactics we're using outside of direct mail. So because of PFL, we have the opportunity to kind of take a step back and look at the direct mail campaigns we were running. And as I said before, we were very siloed in our channels at the start. What I was doing in direct mail did not necessarily match the webinars that were going on or the advertising that we had. We have changed that a lot. So now that we have the time and the resources and kind of more of a team collaboration on what everyone's working on and what our goals are for the quarter, we actually can run a direct mail campaign and have subsequent advertising that goes out to those people, very targeted. We can do an email campaign in our nurture that talks about the direct mail campaigns, what people should be expecting in the mail. And then we have a lot of collateral that the sales team can then use once the people get the mail delivered and SDR start their follow-up. We have one-pagers and ebooks. So what we were using before as kind of the cornerstone piece to develop direct mail, it actually has become very much a supporting piece for our sales team to use to kind of continue the theme and messaging and as they pursue the conversation with people going forward.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the key things to bring up with the campaigns that you're running is, you know, from the time that a physical piece has actually been delivered, your SDRs, your AEs, and your CSMs know that it has been delivered because it's pushing a notification that that package has now arrived on someone's desk. So that timely follow-up is also where I think you guys are seeing such great success in response rates and getting engagement from your audience.
Yeah, I'll actually add one of the amazing pieces of PFL is they can do email alerts. So we've set up in our Marketo instance, whenever something is sent and delivered, or whoever it's going to, so either a CSM, AE, or SDR actually gets that notification. I am CC'd on it as well, and it kind of gives them a heads up. So there's a Salesforce notification that goes out automatically when things are delivered to people, but it's a nice personalized touch that's a little bit more direct and gets right in front of them on their computer so they know that this is about to hit their prospects or their customers and they can do really timely follow-up.
Perfect. So Kelly Cochran from Avtex is asking another question, and I think I know the answer, but I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to answer it. She said, how did you manage making the meeting kits accessible with remote SDRs?
Yeah, so I am in San Francisco, so I know the group of SDRs that work in the Bay Area very well, but everyone in Chicago and London I only know a handful of or have met them all in person a few times. So that was definitely a challenge for us originally because it's hard to get buy-in from someone that you only have, you know, Zoom meetings with or a phone call with. We have an all-hands SDR meeting every Wednesday, and our team makes a very large point to get in front of them to talk about each of our new campaigns, especially the Meeting Maker kits because they're very high touch. We usually do an introductory meeting for everyone, and then the actual SDRs that are working on them, I always set aside time to work with them and their account executive to walk through the process, kind of show them the physical mailer so they can get an idea of what it looks like. It's a lot of like functioning online to an extent, but we run everything through Salesforce, so even though PFL kits and sends everything out for us, and they only have to add someone to a Salesforce campaign, which is a little bit of a manual process, but nothing too hard they can't kind of do within a few minutes if they want to add someone to the campaign.
Nice. So we have another question from Kaylin Apar from Watermark Insights. So they are asking, do you have any tips for getting budget? So they are trying to start their ABM, but obviously if you're infusing direct mail, that tends to be the most expensive part of your campaign strategy. So any tips that you could give to help get buy-in? This is something that I know you and I talked a little bit about in one of the panel discussions that we did about how do you influence change in your organization. So I'm interested to hear your response on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely sympathize with you. Budget is always a tricky situation. I think one of my biggest successes with getting buy-in from our executives is starting small. I know the high-touch mail looks really great and fancy, but that's not where we started. We kind of started from just doing a brochure and then doing postcards to support webinars and events, and then it moved on to the higher-touched kind of larger bundles of the barbecue campaigns. And because we were working with Visible and we were able to see the results, I was very vocal to our leadership about how successful those were. So starting off small, we were able to run a few of these campaigns, see how many opportunities had been created that had a direct mail touch beforehand. We used specific URLs on a lot of our direct mail so we could see the traffic to our website, and then see how many downloads came from certain collateral we were really using as the CTA there. So we started off small and were very adamant about the success we had and even the mistakes we were making. So even though I talk about how all these things were the successes out of the mistakes we previously had, we still have a lot to learn, and we learned along the way, and PFL was really phenomenal as a partner in doing that, being like, hey, this happened to us. We don't really know if this is the right result we should be looking at. How can we be looking at this differently? They're really great at educating us on that. But I would definitely start small and keep going to your leadership and kind of build upon your success to get more buy-in and more budget to get bigger and bigger.
Yeah, and I think that, like you said, the attribution reporting is going to be a critical piece where if you're running, segmenting your audience and saying, okay, we're going to run a test against this small group and actually see what type of response rate we get, and just using the data. I mean, that's something that you have to be very clear on the metrics that you're trying to influence, and then making sure that you're looking at the appropriate data in order to ensure that you can actually track it. So that tracking is definitely a key component there. So Tom has another question, and this is one that comes up quite often for us, for our customers anyway, and I know, Katie, you and I talked a little bit about it. So one of the things that Tom says is the biggest barrier that he faces when it comes to direct mail is the missing data or inaccurate data in the CRM. So managing that physical address information. I know you guys had a strategy that you used. We've got some different ones that we use here, but can you talk a little bit about how you ensured that you actually had the correct physical address for you to be able to trigger the send of those packages?
Yeah, so this is a little bit of a three-part answer, so stick with me here. But when we first had PFL, we had the exact same issue. Our data in Salesforce was not 100% clean, and we didn't always trust that they were the right addresses or people were missing addresses altogether. So we did a training with our SDR team on how to best find addresses. So that goes, we had a little guide of best practices of going to their LinkedIn to see where they're actually located, Googling that HQ address, even calling the front desk and confirming that person works there. And obviously you don't always get the correct answer, or you don't always get someone who's super helpful. But we started off with a foundation of best practices of how you could get someone's address. We actually then, at the same time, we were partnering with LeadSpace, that does a really great job of verifying addresses, so we rely heavily on that. And the final thing we actually did, which was kind of the cherry on top, I mentioned that PFL has the ability to send email alerts when you add someone to a campaign, so when the order is getting placed, when things ship, and when things are delivered. We actually took that as an opportunity to get our team in the know to take that extra step and verify people's addresses. So when our higher touch direct mail is in queue, we have a email sent to either the CSM, the SDR, or the AE on that account, and it has a little fun notification that says, hi, this person at account ABC is about to receive this mailer. This is the address we have, and we pull in the Salesforce information that's currently in there. So that could be a super wonky address. It could be blank. And it says, if this is the right address, do nothing. If it's not, you need to go into Salesforce, and here's how you change it. And we kind of give them a link to a step-by-step guide of what they need to change. And then we have a 2-day wait step on a lot of stuff. So things aren't then sent to shipment until 2 days later. It gives them 48 hours to confirm those addresses, especially with customers and the gifts we send to them. We want those to be 100% accurate, and the CSMs have a little bit more leverage to figure out where those addresses, if they're correct or not, where people actually are. But we leverage that a lot with the higher touch direct mail to make sure that AEs and SDRs are confirming addresses as well. But it's not a perfect process for us at all. We definitely have stuff that gets returned to us. We have people that also reject the direct mail that we send. But we have a lot of things in place to kind of make it, I would say, 80 to 90% accurate when we're doing this.
One of our other customers, Katie, one of the tactics that they use is they start with, and you alluded to this a little bit earlier, is they started with just a flat printed piece that's not going to be as expensive as, say, your barbecue kit. And so that can also influence if they don't have the accurate address. You can actually remove that person from that step in the campaign, so that you're not then continuing to try to send them things to an inaccurate address. So that's great. So Tom has a question here about your attribution reporting. So he asked, how is Visible able to track the touches of the mailers? Are people assigned, and you said this earlier a little bit, but are people assigned a unique URL that they visit once they receive the mailer, or is it Visible collecting data strictly from the Marketo trigger activity?
We actually do a bit of both here. So the technical aspect, I would probably need our Marketo admin to speak about it in a lot more detail than I am knowledgeable about. But we use unique URLs on all of our direct mail, so we're trying to guide them to a certain piece of content on our website, like a demo center, an ebook, things like that. So we do a lot of our tracking via URLs. We also are able to, one second here, Visible collecting data strictly. There's some of the campaigns where we don't have a URL, which is like a nice piece to send out to people, or we're using Visible to, it has different, it collects the success metrics of each of our campaigns, and it's able to kind of pull those into our instance based on all the Marketo triggers that we've set up.
Perfect. So I believe that is all of the questions that we have from our audience at this time. Appreciate all of the engagement from you guys. I love the questions. I love that you guys are trying to problem solve and figure out how to become more efficient and better in your marketing. So thank you so much for attending today's webinar, sponsored or hosted by Dynamic Signal PFL and Marketo.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Marnie, and thank you, Katie. And that does conclude today's webinar. We do thank you for joining us. You may now disconnect and have a great remainder of your day.